Make sure y'all stay on point with
The Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to The Puncher's Point. You guessed it, another prediction episode. I gotta count to see how many prediction episodes in a row I've had. But overall, this is gonna be just me today until the next prediction episode, which will be me also collabing with the in the red corner for our third part of The Puncher's Point in the red corner collaboration. But with all that being said, we got Keyshawn Davis versus Denys Berinchyk. Okay, that is the fight that we got. That is going to be taking place February 14th. And this is Keyshawn Davis's first chance at a world title. Now, when I look at what's going on with this whole fight, and when I'm looking at both of these fighters, what I noticed is both of these fighters have relatively the same, I don't want to use the word style of fighting because it's not the same style, but they have the same strengths and weaknesses. It's all about who's gonna capitalize on those strengths and weaknesses more. Regardless of that, this is gonna be for the WBO Lightweight Championship. It's going to be in Madison Square Garden. So Keyshawn Davis has a chance to create his own Madison Square Garden moment. Now, overall, I do want to start off with Keyshawn Davis. Usually I start off with the champion, but this time I want to start off with the most known guy, which is Keyshawn Davis. Now, with Keyshawn, overall, he's looked great his last two fights, his last two or three fights. Obviously, he's undefeated. Um, so as far as the strengths that I've caught for Keyshawn Davis, so the one thing about Keyshawn, he's very good at slipping in and out, and that to me is his biggest strength. The thing about Keyshawn, he never gets too greedy with his attacks. He'll go into the inside, he'll land a good 2, 3 punch combination, and he'll slip right back out. And even when he has his opponent in trouble, he's not just swinging wildly trying to get the knockout. He will get the knockout, but what he's also doing is he's being patient. He'll land a good 3, 4 punches, but then he'll also pause and he'll reframe and he'll basically reset himself to make sure that he's not putting himself in any position to where he can get counterpunched or he can get hurt. And that's what I really like about Keyshawn Davis. And that's something you don't see from even a lot of veteran boxers in today's days. A lot of these guys, they're so focused, they're so obsessed with getting the knockout that sometimes they don't reset themselves. And the thing is about Keyshawn Davis, when he gets you in trouble, he will make you pay. But at the same time, he's not going to stay in that pocket and give a guy opportunities to land those types of punches on him. The other thing about him, he's got a very, very good jab, and I believe this jab is going to be the key in this fight to beating Denys Berinchyk. I feel like with that jab, Keyshawn Davis can set up a lot of things, and overall, the other thing, the jab, it kind of channels all the other strengths as well, such as high volume to the body. Obviously, the thing about Keyshawn Davis, he goes to the body a lot more than a lot of lightweights that I've seen. There's a lot of lightweights who have good body punches. They can hurt somebody with grueling body punches, and Keyshawn can too. But the thing is about Keyshawn targets that body a lot more than what a lot of boxers do in this division. He's very good at picking his shots as well. The one thing I will say about Keyshawn, he always finds those openings and he's very, very accurate. That's the thing about Keyshawn Davis. And overall, I mean, the guy is a very good polished boxer and he's still young. I mean, like I said, this guy has the potential to be the future of boxing. So overall, when he's picking those shots, I feel like that is the time where Keyshawn Davis becomes a lot more dangerous, especially when he sees those openings. And he's very good at creating space. Like I mentioned with how he's able to slip out. He's very good at creating space. He's very good at creating just enough space in between his opponent to where he can land effective punches. A lot of guys, you'll see them back up a little bit too much. You'll see a lot of guys, they kind of just run away or they'll try to avoid danger at any cost. Keyshawn Davis doesn't do that. If you look at Keyshawn Davis, where he's centered, he's always placing himself just barely outside of his opponent's punching range to the point where if they do mess up or if they do throw a loppy hook or they do throw a wild shot, he's able to counterpunch on them. And it's the little tiny details about Keyshawn Davis which is going to make him a champion. It's the tiny details, the way he's able to create barely just enough space to land effective punches, the way he is able to pick his shots and the accuracy of those shots in which he is able to hurt opponents, the way he's able to go to the body more than a lot of fighters do. There's a lot of tiny small things about Keyshawn Davis that is going to make him a champion. A lot of fundamental things that is going to make him a champion. He's got a very good left hook. He protects himself at all times, even though there's been times where he's got clipped and hurt. He protects himself at all times. I will say that there's not many times I can look at Keyshawn Davis where I'm like, oh, he dropped his guard, or oh, he was a little too sloppy on that right on that exchange or that combination right there. There's very few times I see that with Keyshawn Davis. And last but not least, he's got a very, very good right uppercut. Now, what's going to stop him from becoming a world champion if he keeps it up? Well, the thing about him is he gets caught in between combos. You see, Keyshawn Davis, he's fought some decent opponents. Obviously, Gustavo Lemos, he embarrassed him. Then you look at Pedraza, there was the fight with Albright. Overall, he's fought some decent opponents. I will say that. But the thing is about Keyshawn Davis, um, the best time you're gonna land shots on him is in between combinations. I feel like once he has a combination in mind, he kind of sticks to it. And it's not something that he just thinks on the fly. Like he is very accurate. He does pick his shots very, very well. But I also feel like there's times where Keyshawn Davis already has the combo set up, and that could be a problem because the issue with what's going on with Keyshawn Davis is when he goes in for those combos, he's looking to land a certain combination. And I feel like in a lot of times, if he can't land that combination, that's the perfect time for his opponents to catch him in between combos. You can look at that with the Albright fight, with Namir Albright. I feel in that fight, I feel like that was the perfect time for Keyshawn Davis to get clipped because the problem is with him, he's just so hooked on those combinations to the point where Nahir was able to uh, land some good combinations and good punches on him in specific moments in that fight. The other thing about him is he could be pushed back. Now, the problem is with Keyshawn Davis, he's fought guys who have power, he's fought guys who had boxing ability, but he's never fought a guy who's had both. And Albright, good opponent, everything, he was a good boxer, but the problem is with Albright, when he stepped into that fight, Albright couldn't hurt him. I mean, we're talking about a guy who has 16 wins with 7 knockouts. Not that he doesn't have any power, but he didn't have enough power to where Keyshawn could slow down on the gas. And I feel like in order to beat Keyshawn, you're gonna have to find a boxer with great power and a guy who can also be a pure boxer. And I didn't see that with Albright. So I will say he can be pushed back if you find that right opponent to push him back. And there were times where I believe Albright did push him back a little bit, gained maybe a little bit of respect, but it just wasn't enough to stop Keyshawn Davis from applying pressure. And last but not least, he can use his head movement a lot more. Now, he does have good head movement, but sometimes I feel like he relies a little bit too much on his footwork and spacing opposed to head movement. And I believe if he does focus on his head movement a lot more, he's going to be a very, very dangerous defensive fighter as well. And I've seen moments where he establishes that head movement and he looks very good doing it. But at the same time, I would like to see it a lot more. I would like him to stay centered and while an opponent's trying to come at him, basically, kind of weave and slip out the way, you kind of move his head a little bit, not keeping it on a swivel. I would like to see that a lot more from Keyshawn Davis. And last but not least, a perfect time to hit him. I know I said the last weakness was going to be the head movement. But the perfect time to land a punch on Keyshawn Davis is when he goes in for a body shot and that straight body shot. Because when he goes in for the straight body shot, he kind of leans in a little bit too much. And that was a mistake that Errol Spence made. And that's a mistake that I believe Bud capitalized on when he beat Errol Spence. So in the same situation here, Berinchyk, I believe in order to beat Keyshawn Davis, I believe that's going to be a tool as well. Now, going to Denys Berinchyk, the WBO champion. Denys Berinchyk, he won the WBO championship against Navarrete. Navarrete moved up. He beat Navarrete for that title. It was a very, very close fight. However, now knowing that Navarrete had an injury sustained on him during that fight, it's safe to say that the power of Navarrete didn't translate in this fight. And just like Keyshawn Davis, Berinchyk's got some decent names on his resume as well. Anthony Yigit and Emmanuel Navarrete are the two most known, I would say. So, as far as Berinchyk, what would be his strengths for Denys Berinchyk? His pressure. He does have a lot of great pressure, and I believe he is that type of fighter that wants to fight you on the inside. He wants to get into the inside with you, and he wants to cause that pressure. He wants to push his opponents back. And he's done that well with a lot of opponents. He's done that relatively well. Even Navarrete, there were times where he was applying the pressure on Navarrete, and Navarrete was a little bit overwhelmed by it in some moments. He's got a decent right hook. I will say that. I will say if there's a big punch for Berinchyk, it's going to be that right hook, and I believe that's the punch that Keyshawn Davis is gonna have to look out for. He is very sneaky to the body. See, Berinchyk isn't that type of guy that's going to make it an emphasis like Keyshawn Davis. Like he's going to keep attacking the body. What he's going to do is he's going to use feints. He's gonna fake like he's going up. He's going to hit you in the body, and he's going to sneak his way in through the body. And it's going to be times where you really don't see it, or you're not going to expect it. But that's what I like about Berinchyk is that he's not emphasizing it. He's sneaking it in. And both times it could be effective, but he's very sneaky when it comes to body shots, when it comes to using his footwork to get into the inside. He's very good at circling around opponents as well. That's a skill that I think a lot of Ukrainian fighters have. Guys like Lomachenko, guys like Usyk, they're very good at circling around their opponents, kind of like a shark. They're very good at making sure that instead of moving lateral like a lot of guys do, they're very good at kind of making that circle, punching you and hitting you with the jab and moving around you, opposed to just left and right and side to side. That's what I will say is a big strength for Denys Berinchyk, is the way he's able to circle his opponent, kind of like a shark. And last but not least, he's got very decent footwork. Obviously, these Ukrainian fighters, they got something about the footwork that they got. They got some of the best footwork in the game. And I believe Denys Berinchyk, he kind of falls behind that. He's obviously not as good as Lomachenko and Usyk in that sense, but he's very good when it comes to his footwork in certain cases against certain opponents. Now, what are the weaknesses? Well, the thing about Denys Berinchyk, he wasn't tested until Navarrete. And what I noticed in the Navarrete fight was Navarrete did a very good job of applying the pressure and pushing the gas. Just like Keyshawn Davis, he can be pushed back. When a fighter does get their pressure on him and when a fighter does put that foot to the gas, he can be pushed back. And I believe that is going to be a weakness that Denys Berinchyk could be exposed to in this fight. The other thing about him is I believe if you could find a fighter with enough power to get Denys Berinchyk out of it, just like Keyshawn Davis, I believe that's when it causes problem. Navarrete has power, but in that fight, I believe he had a left shoulder injury, I believe it was. A left shoulder injury, I believe it was. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I know that he had a bad injury, and because of that upper body injury, Navarrete wasn't able to generate as much power, and you can obviously see that off of Navarrete's last fight. So I believe that if you can find a fighter with a good pressure and good power, I believe that you have a chance to defeat Berinchyk. Now, what's both of these fighters going to have to do? Well, I would say for Denys Berinchyk, I would say honestly their keys are really the same. I would say that if you're going to beat Keyshawn Davis, if you're Denys Berinchyk, you have to apply the pressure and you got to make your power known early. And it's the same thing for beating Denys Berinchyk if you're Keyshawn Davis. Make your power known and also pressure him. I do believe that in this type of case, I do believe that Denys Berinchyk is going to have to circle Keyshawn a lot, give him looks that he's never seen. And I believe for Keyshawn Davis is going to have to basically use his power punches. And not only that, but use his spacing to create opportunities to where he can force Denys Berinchyk to make a mistake. So, with that being said, I was talking about this breakdown so much that I forgot to give the betting odds for these two. So, let's get these betting odds up real quick. Okay, so the favorite for this fight is going to be Keyshawn Davis as the challenger at a whopping minus 750 favorite, while Denys Berinchyk is going to be a plus 470 underdog. The most likely outcome to happen is going to be Keyshawn Davis by points or decision at minus 125. And the least likely outcome, besides it being a draw, is going to be Denys Berinchyk by knockout or TKO at plus 1600. So, first off, is this fight worth betting on? I see the most favorable outcome happening in this fight. I don't think he's going to knock out Denys Berinchyk. I think it's going to be an 8-4 decision, maybe 9-3, 9 rounds to 3 or 8 rounds to 4. I'm going to give it to Keyshawn Davis, and I think it's going to happen by unanimous decision. I wouldn't say this is the fight to bet on if you're looking to win big, because the most favorable outcome, that's the one I can see most likely happening. I mean, maybe he knocks out Denys Berinchyk, and even then, that's the second likely outcome to happen, and I don't think that's going to happen. So overall, you're not going to win much money by betting on this fight. So I would say if there's a fight to bet on, it's not going to be this one if you want to win big. But overall, what I can see happening is I can see Denys Berinchyk. I can see him kind of circling him, creating some openings to where he can take advantage of Keyshawn Davis. But I also see Keyshawn Davis adjusting, and I can also see him kind of taking the early rounds, getting maybe into a little bit of a fog between like 5 and 6, but then picking it up around like 7 and 8 in the later rounds as well. I think I could see Denys Berinchyk winning 4 rounds. I could most likely see him winning three. So overall, I think now he's gonna have to face a fighter with power, with good boxing ability, a guy who can back him up. I think that because Keyshawn Davis has been on such a roll and his last few fights have been nothing but decisive, I'm gonna go Keyshawn Davis by unanimous decision. Most likely he's gonna win 9 rounds to 3. And I think overall, we're going to start looking at Keyshawn Davis as a serious champion in this lightweight division. I believe this fight, this is going to be his Madison Square Garden moment, but I also believe this is going to be the moment where he's going to start getting those big fights. And then the question after that is he's going to be ready for some of those big fights at lightweight. But overall, we're gonna have to see how this pans out. As far as Denys Berinchyk, if he does win this fight, next thing you know, I feel like you're gonna have to start putting a lot more respect on Denys Berinchyks name. I feel like there hasn't been enough respect on him because a lot of people just think Keyshawn's gonna go in there and obliterate him, and that's not the case. Denys Berinchyk is a very, very good fighter, and I believe that Keyshawn Davis will make it decisive. He will win, but at the same time, don't sleep on Denys Berinchyk. The guy is a good boxer. And I know there's times where he looks like he's kind of slacking or he looks a little slow or he looks a little sloppy, but overall, if you put him up against the right opponent, I believe Denys Berinchyk, can have his moments in this fight. So I just don't want people sleeping on Denys Berinchyk. He is a good fighter. I want people to understand that. But Keyshawn Davis right now, he's looking like he's on another level. He's looking the best he's been. And overall, I just can't bet against him right now. So I'm gonna go Keyshawn Davis unanimous decision. And with that being said, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens. This fight is going to be taking place February 14th, Madison Square Garden, WBO Lightweight Championship. Keyshawn Davis versus Denys Berinchyk. And with that being said, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. We have the third part of the Puncher's Point in the Red Corner collaboration. This will be the last episode with In the Red Corner on my channel, but you can also catch us again for part 4 on their channel when they do their big the last crescendo card breakdown. You can also catch me over there as well. But overall, with that being said, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the content, the reels, all of it. Make sure y'all continue to tune into the magazines. We're gonna have a magazine coming out real soon for this week that just happened. So, last but not least, guys, this is the perfect time to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.